video will provide a tutorial on the application of a faux finish on our garden statuary. We also would use the same technique for applying it to our garden furniture. Each of these pieces will be prepared with a base coat in a black or a dark gray color. This tutorial will not go over the application of that material, but it will talk about the glaze that we're going to be applying. We can call this either a glaze or a faux finish, but it is a thin coating on top of a base coat. The material that we're going to be using is a oil-based paint in a satin finish, which has then been cut with naphtha reducer. And so we're creating our own glaze. This is an example here of what we're going to be using. So you can see that this is a pretty thin material at this point. It's about a 1/3 cut of naphtha to the paint. In order to apply the material, we're going to use just a disposable bristle brush, and we'll be using some cloths to wipe down the material after we've made the application. So we're just going to take and wet the brush out. I like to more dry brush it, so I'm going to take a little bit of that moisture off of the paintbrush as I apply it to the statue. So I'm stippling it as I go along, and you don't want to work in too large of an area because you do have to wipe back the material. So we'll work here on his front side as we go along, wanting to coat as much as you can. I'm going to take a little bit more, again, brushing off a little bit so that we don't get too much of a coating at one point. All right, so we've got most of his front side here. And now I'm going to take a dry cloth, and this will get covered in the paint as it goes along. I'm just going to wipe away so that you have just a thin coating and allowing it to stay in the deep crevices of the statue. And if it's very wet, you can also leave a kind of streak marks to make it look appropriate to the design of the piece. So you can see the deep crevices around his eye and in the fingers have more of the faux finish left behind. And as it dries, I can wipe it some more to give it a nice texture. We'll continue to apply here on the tail so that you can see what it looks like on an area that does not have as much detail to it. That was a little thick, so we want to spread that in quite a bit larger area. If you do get any bristles, just brush them away. You want to try to work an entire area that is together so that you don't have any strange connections from one worked area to another. I am working relatively quickly, and that is something that you do need to do so that your paint does not dry, because it is such a thin coating, it is drying very quickly. So again, wiping here. And here, because we don't have a lot of detail, we want to use the motion of the wiping in order to create the pattern left behind. I'm gently wiping. There's not a lot of pressure that I'm applying at this time. Stand him up a little bit. We can get his back of his tail here. Let's put him down on his face here so we can see the back completely. The one difficult part of applying this faux finish is that as you apply it, because there is that reducer in it, you end up taking away anything that you've applied and wiped when you apply more. So here we've used the wiping motion in order to create the pattern that's left behind. You can wipe down further if you want to create more dark spots. So if I could highlight his, now that this is dried a little bit more, I can take a spot on his arm and highlight some more by rubbing away at the coating to expose more of the black, to give it that antique look that we're looking for, or attempting to create. Let's try to get his other side here. I want to be careful in this area that I'm overlapping on his tail where it already had some paint. As you can see right here, I've wiped away any of the coating that I did earlier because I wiped it, or because I applied more paint. Sometimes you need to shape your cloth to get into the tight areas. Kind of wipe away on his face there. Get him up here so we can see him a little better. His face needs a little bit more help to make it look uniform. I've missed a couple spots inside here, so I need to go back and get those. We just need to finish off the bottom of him. Again, with very little paint left on the brush here, but it makes it easy to work with. We don't want to over apply at this point because we've already put so much of the glaze in place. A little bit of thick paint running down there, so we want to catch that. This little squirrel sits on top of a hinge of a fountain. That's why it has this rather interestingly shaped pedestal. Now, once all this glaze is applied, you will allow it to dry for 24 hours. And because this glaze is so thin, it does require a clear sealant to be applied in order to allow the glaze to adhere and stay in place for long periods of time. Let's finish off this front area. That's it. We have applied a faux finish to our little statue. So the application of the lacquer, again, would be 24 hours later. And at this time, we are using a lacquer bar Permalac by Peacock Labs. This is the satin finish. It does need to be applied in 3 layers, but it dries very quickly, so it's an application that can be done within 1 day. And this will hold the glaze for many, many years. I hope you found this to be educational and informative on how we do our work, and I thank you for watching.